I think a 40mm lens is a perfect lens for street photographs. I will give you 3 reasons why I think it's so. Hi, it's Peter here. And the first is the portability. Most manufacturers have a small 40mm lens in their lens lineup. They might not be the fastest lens. Most of them are f2.8. And having a small lens when you're photographing on the streets is really good because it's very portable. And what's more important is that with a small camera and a small lens, you are invisible in the streets. Yes, and that's, at least for me, a big thing. I don't want to be in the middle of everything. I want to be the observer and photograph the things that I see and do not want to interfere with that. That's why I want to be invisible. And also, when you're walking in the streets, especially nights, you don't scream expensive gear. And the lens doesn't have to be big because we have autofocus now. You don't need a big and wide focusing ring on your 40mm lens. I like to have the aperture ring nowadays that I've been using Fuji for a few months. I'm getting used to the aperture ring, and this 27mm f2.8 pancake length for my Fuji XS20 has the aperture ring, which I like, as I said. But of course, during winter time, we have to have gloves on because it's so cold. Then controlling the aperture from the back wheel is also a very good thing. And it is a 27mm lens on an APS-C sensor, so it is equivalent to a 40mm if we're talking in full frame terms. When it comes to the angle of view, it's equal to that. Then I have the Ricoh GR3X, which has a 26.1mm lens, and it's also an APS-C sensor size, so it is roughly a 40mm if we talk it the angle of view in full frame terms. And okay, this is technically not a lens, but it's a camera with a fixed lens. It's a compact camera, and that's why I chose the X version of this, because there is also a 28mm version for Ricoh GR3, and I prefer this focal length, so that's why I picked this. And what I like about this camera is that I can fit it in my front pocket in my jeans if I need to. Very seldom do that, but that's possible. And you know, what I do use it for is street photographs, and I have it in my pocket at all times. So I'm always ready to make those street photographs with a 40mm lens. So, and even my OM5 with the M Zuiko 20mm f1.4 lens is quite small, even though this is not the pancake lens. If I was using this a bit more, I would probably get the Panasonic version of the 20mm lens, the pancake lens. And that is something that I might get and see how that works on my OM5 for street photographs, because that would make the set even smaller. And then reason number 2, versatility. You might think that prime lens is not very versatile, but it is, because a 40mm lens is not too wide, but it's wide enough to get a bit more into the images in tight spots. But it's not too long like a 50mm lens, the standard lens. So it's a good compromise between the two, and that makes it very versatile because it can cover some of the wide angle stuff and some of the short telephoto stuff. So that's why I like it so much, and that's why it is, to me at least, very versatile lens. And before we get into the third reason, a few reminder of a poll that I made in YouTube, a community post a few months ago. I think it's already that long. I asked you, what is your favorite lens for street photographs? And let me quote the results. Most of you, 38%, said it is 35mm, and the second most popular was 50mm with 24% of you, and 40mm was the fourth with 17%. Almost as popular was 28mm with 15%, and then there was something else that was 5%. Let us know in the comments down below what it is right now. Have you changed your mind, or you still are with the 35mm, most of you? And those who haven't answered, please let us know in the comments down below. It's interesting to hear, because that is part of the how do you say, the storytelling, that what lens you have. So it'd be interesting to hear if you're more of a wide angle photographer or short telephoto or standard lens photographer. And after the third reason, I will have a small portion where I talk about why primes are better than zoom lenses when you're doing street photographs. But now the reason number 3 is natural perspective. A 40mm lens has a quite natural perspective, and when I talk about the perspective, I mean the relationship between foreground and background. They are kind of equal. It doesn't emphasize the foreground too much, like a really wide angle lens makes things that are closer to the camera really big compared to the things that are in the far or further away. With a 40mm lens, which is almost a standard lens, it will give you a natural perspective, and I personally like a natural perspective and how I sees the world. The kind of like the angle of view is slightly narrower than what we can see with our eyes, but the whole thing is the perspective and how it compresses the background, and it does it the same way as our naked eye does. And before we get into the discussion about primes and zoom lenses, let's talk about why a street photography lens doesn't have to be very fast. 2.8 is totally fine. I tend to stop down to f4 to f5.6 anyways, so I don't need a fast lens. Because I want more depth of field for two reasons. I think it's the classical way of doing street photographs, which I like. Narrow depth of field hides too much and kind of like takes us out of the context and takes us out of the streets if we have really blurry background. Having some details there and even an image that is sharp from front to back is something that I might want in most of my street photographs to show everything that's in the frame. And that also has to do with why I like a little bit narrower angle of view than 28 or 35mm, because wider angle lens, it will, be a slightly different way, and of course because of the perspective compression, 40mm works a lot better. So that's also good if you have like a f2.8 lens or even f4 lens for your street photographs. It can be a smaller lens because fast lenses tend to be bigger, and that's one good reason to have a slower lens for street photographs. And then let's discuss why a prime. Having a prime means, of course, that it's a fixed focal length, and zoom means that you can have different focal lengths with zooming. And you would think that a zoom would be better, you would be faster, you get to zoom in, and if something is closer or further away, you can zoom in and zoom out. But yes, that is something. But I like to have the same focal length on my street photographs, because when I see something, I already know the distance where I'm supposed to be when I have a fixed focal length. I know that distance. I'm so used to that that field of view that I'm automatically at the right spot when it comes to the cropping of the image. And that's a really good. With zoom lenses, I always have to fiddle around with the zoom lens, and it doesn't really work for me that well. And also I like to have the constant look in my images when I shoot in the streets. Having really wide angle shots and really telephoto, it doesn't look good if you're making a set of images. Sometimes, yeah, you could argue that you need some, versatility and differences between the focal lengths, but I tend to like the 40mm, and that's why I think it is the best. And having a constant look and constant way of how the perspective compression looks is something that I like. I prefer that. But how much do you use prime versus zoom lenses? That's also interesting to hear. Let's comment that and see how that goes. How many of you use primes and how many of you prefer zooms? And here are 3 videos about 40mm lenses. Technically the one is more about the camera, the Ricoh, but it's also about the 40mm lens that it has, or 26.1 on an APS-C sensor. You might want to watch that and learn more about that focal length and about those lenses. But hey, thanks for watching, and bye for now.